In 1943, a retired steelworker in Youngstown, Ohio, lived on $4 a week for groceries, stretching a single tin of meat across 3 days with whatever beans were left in the jar. That con was one of 10 poor man meals born out of Army field kitchens during World War II. Meals soldiers ate in the field and families copied at home when there was nothing else. It's number 10 on this list. There's also a stew a mess cook kept alive for a week straight. One skillet, no icebox. Feeding whoever showed up hungry. That one's number 4. These are the meals Army field cooks actually made. The ones that kept people fed on almost nothing, from ration tins to kitchen tables. Hit that subscribe button. Let's count down the 10 forgotten Army field cook meals of World War II. 10. C-ration meat and beans. Canned meat and canned beans, and not much beyond that. The steelworker in Youngstown ate it plain, sometimes cold, whenever the stove felt like one more expense he couldn't justify. He'd pop the tin, warm it if he had gas to spare, and eat it standing at the counter. Salt and iron in every bite. The kind of taste that isn't asking to be liked, just to keep you upright. He wasn't alone in that habit. Men on the line a decade earlier had eaten the same thing crouched in mud, and it worked exactly the same way for both of them. It meant somebody, somewhere, had decided you were still worth feeding, even if you didn't know if you'd see morning. 9. K-ration, biscuit, and cheese. A widow outside Macon, Georgia figured out early in 1945 that a biscuit could survive weeks in a tin if you baked it hard enough, and she'd press a little cheese onto it before her 6 kids ate whichever meal needed stretching most. The Army had landed on the same trick. A biscuit dense enough to survive a parachute drop. A small block of processed cheese you pressed on with your thumb. Dry, plain, heavy in the stomach in a way that mattered more than taste when a man had 20 miles left to walk that day. It cost her $1.20 a week to keep her kitchen running, and this was most of what filled it. There was no ceremony in it, just a war, at home and abroad both, that didn't wait for anyone to be hungry. 8. Powdered egg scramble before dawn. Army cooks were already stirring vats of it. Powdered eggs whisked into water until smooth, poured into a hot pan. Stirred until it set into something like breakfast. It smelled like Sunday, even on a Tuesday, sulfur sharp and strange at first, but warm enough to fool you for a minute. Mothers on the home front bought the same tins for the same reason the cooks did. Fresh eggs were rationed, and a can of powder cost about a dime in 1944, enough for a family's breakfast all week, if you didn't mind that it never quite tasted like the eggs you remembered. By the mid-1940s, a lot of that cooking was happening alone. Husbands gone, neighbors gone. Ration books doing the work. Grocery lists used to do. Number 7 was the pot that answered anyway. 7. Field-cooked mulligan stew. This is the stew from the start, the one a mess cook kept going for a week straight. One skillet, no icebox. 40 hungry men expecting something hot before sunrise. Whatever meat scraps were on hand went in, along with potatoes, carrots, onions, and water, and the heat never really turned off. He'd brown what he had, dump the rest in the pot, and let it sit for hours until nothing in it could be picked apart anymore. It smelled like the whole camp, thick and brown and unhurried, and it tasted like nothing had gone to waste. Cooks kept adding to it all week instead of starting over, which meant the pot never really emptied. Proof a meal could belong to everyone and still be enough. 6. Hardtack, biscuits, flour, water, and salt. Mixed stiff, rolled flat, baked until it could knock on a table without breaking. That was hardtack, and it wasn't trying to taste like anything. It barely smelled like anything either, which was exactly the point, since it could survive months without rotting in a way fresh bread never could. Flour ran about 5 cents a pound through the 1940s, so a whole batch cost next to nothing and traveled anywhere a man could carry it. It wasn't built for comfort, it was built to last, and sometimes lasting is the only kind of comfort available. 5. Canned spam over rice. It came home from the Pacific in a soldier's duffel bag and never really left the family table again. Slice the spam, fry it until the edges go dark, spoon it over rice, cooked plain in the same pot. Salt and smoke together, showing up exactly when nothing else would. A can ran about 30 cents in 1944, cheap enough that families kept buying it long after the war ended, and it became something quieter than a ration. The taste of getting by, without anyone having to say so out loud. There's a difference between food that's cheap and food that's poor. Cheap food is made in a factory to save you time. Poor food is made in a kitchen, by someone doing math between every ingredient. 4. Instant coffee with powdered milk. A jar of instant crystals could last a month if you were careful with it. And for a lot of people in 1943, 20 cents bought exactly that kind of care. Spoon the crystals into a cup, stir in the powdered milk, pour hot water over both until it turns brown and bitter, and a little burnt at the edges. It wasn't much, 5 minutes that belonged to no one else in a day that otherwise belonged to everyone. But when every other ritual had been rationed away, that was enough to count as one. 3. Beef and vegetable hash. Nothing in this one was bought special. Leftover beef, potatoes, whatever vegetables were starting to wilt in the bin, chopped fine and fried hard in one pan until a crust formed on the bottom, and you had to work to turn it. It smelled like the whole week finally getting used up, and it tasted like nothing had gone in the trash, which at 17 cents a pound for the ground beef scraps at the discount counter in 1945 was the entire point. Wasting what you had and respecting it were two different things, and this was how you chose the second one. 2. Chocolate D-ration bar. The army built this one on purpose to be a little disappointing. Chocolate, oat flour, and sugar melted low and slow so it wouldn't seize, pressed flat, then left to set hard rather than smooth. Dense and bitter instead of sweet, built to be eaten in small pieces over a long day instead of all at once. A bar cost the government about 7 cents to make, and every cent of that went toward making sure a soldier couldn't eat it too fast and have nothing left. It was rationed hope measured out to last exactly as long as it needed to. One meal left, and it's the one that never needed a war to matter. 1. Field-baked cornbread sharecroppers across the South were baking this long before the war started, and they kept baking it long after. Cornmeal, mixed loose with water or buttermilk. A little fat, whatever leavening was left in the tin, poured into a hot pan and baked until the edges went dark and pulled away from the sides. It smelled like grain and smoke together, tasted like something that came from the ground instead of a factory, and it cost about 4 cents a pound for the cornmeal through the 1940s. Cheap enough that almost no one went without it entirely, war or not. It was the one thing poverty couldn't take away, a family's own bread made by their own hands every single night. Pick one of these, just one. Make it this week. Not for a video, not for the comments, for yourself. Sit at the table, not the couch. Set a place, even if it's only for you. Eat it slow enough to taste it. Tell me in the comments. Which one takes you back? The mulligan stew or the cornbread? Every one of these meals fed more than a stomach.